The new Grand Prix season dawns down under. It's going to be a wonderful journey in F1 2004. Hello there. Yeah, welcome to Melbourne. The Australian Grand Prix is our launching pad. The first of 18 races that are going to take us right around the world. The hot air balloon, though, stays here. Now, they've changed the qualifying rules once again. Let's bring you right up to date with that and find out how they line up for race one of the season.
They've split the session down the middle and first impressions aren't favourable. Every driver now has 2 flying laps. Qualifying actually lasts longer than last year's race. It takes a very long time to arrive at the meaningful action. Then the BARs confirm their winter testing promise. First, Sato throws in an absolute stormer, good enough to equal his career best 7th on the grid. Barrichello then goes quickest through the final sector, beating the lap record set by teammate Michael Schumacher on Friday. The champions Ferrari looking awesome. For Britain, Jenson Button in the spare comes very close to a place on the front row. He posts the same time as Montoya in the Williams. But Coulthard makes a big mistake at the final corner. Last year he won from 11th on the grid. This year he starts 12th. Michael Schumacher and the new Ferrari have been lightning quick out of the box. He's the best in the first 2 sectors. That means an all Ferrari and all Bridgestone front row. For the 4th year running in Melbourne, it's the world champion and his teammate up front. Montoya and Button with identical times, but Montoya did his first. The Colombian, though, half a second down on Schumacher. Button's best in 54 starts, hunting that elusive first podium. 6th, Webber's best in his home Grand Prix. Ralf Schumacher a disappointing 8th. Raikkonen just making the top 10. McLaren teammate Coulthard starting way off the pace, as do the Jordans, Heidfeld and Pantano. The Hungarian Baumgartner, he's been struggling. At least he recorded a time, unlike Panis and the debutants Klian and Bruni. Here we go then with the best of the Foster's Australian Grand Prix with Martin Brundle and James Allen.
Michael Schumacher then 3 times a winner here in the last 4 years. Alongside him Rubens Barrichello, behind Schumacher, Juan Pablo Montoya, twice on the podium in the last 2 years. The long winter of waiting is over. 58 laps of the Australian Grand Prix will begin when everybody has formed up on the grid. But for now, turn up your volume buttons and enjoy the sound of 20 Formula One cars throwing themselves down towards the first corner, and the 2004 World Championship begins now! Cracking start by Alonso. Look at Alonso on the grass. He's attacked Montoya, but Montoya's fighting back, and Alonso has to yield. 2 Ferraris, 1 and 2 in the corner. Montoya runs wide. Alonso goes through, and Montoya definitely lost space there, and Jenson Button holds on to his 4th place. But a cracking start by Fernando Alonso.
Yes, indeed. It'd be good to see a replay of that. I'm sure we'll get one shortly, but Montoya in all sorts of trouble down to that first corner. Now he's even behind his teammate, Ralf Schumacher, back there in 5th or 6th place. Coulthard got away well. Raikkonen had a very poor start, I saw out of the window, and so did Mark Webber, I believe, in the Jaguar, not immediately get away well. He's down to 8th place.
So as they make their way round on the first lap, Michael Schumacher leads from Rubens Barrichello. Alonso is 3rd, Button is 4th, 5th, Jarno Trulli. Another great start for him in the Renault. Ralf Schumacher up to 6th, 7th, Juan Pablo Montoya from 3rd on the grid. Mark Webber is 8th, Sato is 9th, David Coulthard is up to 10th place. That's where his teammate Raikkonen started. Raikkonen dropped down to 13th. Here's his cracking scrap, though, on the track, as you can see, between, that looks like Massa and Raikkonen.
Yes, indeed. Raikkonen trying to make up now. He really, and he tremendously fast under braking for turn 13 there. Raikkonen just bogged down on the lines, looking out of the window, just did not get away at all, and had to sort of relaunch the car away. Schumacher leads from Barrichello, Alonso, Button then safely in 4th. Trulli's done well up there in 5th place. Ralf Schumacher, Juan Pablo Montoya, Mark Webber, Sato, Coulthard 10th.
That's not the start at all that Juan Pablo Montoya had in mind. He was talking to you on the grid. Could he live with the red cars? We were asking him, but certainly making life very difficult for himself here in the first Grand Prix by dropping from 3rd down to 7th. And worse news for him, he's got his teammate Ralf Schumacher alongside him. There they are, and Montoya has got past him.
Yep, past him under braking for turn 3, where Ralf Schumacher was so cautious in qualifying and making the team spit a few feathers because he lost 7/10 under the first 2 braking zones. there are now the two McLarens, line astern. At the moment, no way past Sato in 9 for Coulthard. But for me, James, it's very significant that Alonso has made it up into 3rd place and is keeping the Ferraris well in sight. If we're right about that, Renault being very good in a longer run under race conditions.
Yes, well, we're talking about the strategy of the races here, typically a 1 or 2 stop race, but they've made the pit lane faster now. The speed limit now 60 miles an hour. It's up from 45 miles an hour last season. And the pit lane itself is shorter, so they're trying to encourage people to make more stops, and certainly the indications are the guys who qualified towards the front are going to make 3 stops here this afternoon, or certainly was carrying a 3-stop fuel load at the start of the race. They can change their strategy as they go along. You might see them running a longer middle stint, but Alonso, we sense, is running perhaps a little bit more fuel than the people around him, and if that's the case, given the way the Renault, as I say, is very gentle on its rear Michelin tyres, he could be sitting in the pound seats here this afternoon, certainly looking good for a podium finish.
Here's a replay of the start. You can see the green Jaguar of Webber 3 back on the left, very slow away, and still those Renaults quick off the line. Whatever they learned under traction and launch control regulations, they've certainly put it into play as well for the driver control system. Both Renaults flying, and it looks as if Montoya got too much wheel spin, and look at that. Trulli and Alonso already all over him, and now he goes in too deep, locks the wheel onto the grass and loses out badly. There's another angle, and there is Montoya just locking that unloaded inside right front, and you lose so much deceleration. Your front tyres doing most of the braking. You've got about 58% of your braking energy through the front, and you just cannot slow down. He's going okay. He's in relatively clear air. He's doing 26.8, but the Ferraris are doing 24.5 now for Michael Schumacher. 24.5. Incredible pace.
It is, although you have to say, Martin, that there are a couple of queues being formed here. There's the one behind Jarno Trulli, which contains the 2 Williams cars. Montoya, we think, is on a slightly different strategy from Jarno Trulli and possibly being held up there. And this is the other problem here. Takuma Sato, although Coulthard not that close to him, Raikkonen you can see, and Massa behind them. But Sato is doing pretty slow lap times in comparison with the men in front of him. And I wonder whether perhaps McLaren do have a bit more pace if they just get themselves in front of Sato.
I don't think David's close enough to be worrying Sato too much, and therefore we have Fisichella in the Sauber. But it's interesting to me that Massa is beginning, who's in 12th, beginning to hustle Raikkonen and Coulthard, just to demonstrate, I think, that the Bridgestones in these heat conditions and on this track are far, far superior, and that is why the Ferraris are romping away at the front. They've got the best car and the best tyres. On
a cool day, the track temperature 26 degrees, the air temperature 19. It's as chilly as it's been throughout this weekend here in Melbourne. It was quite warm earlier in the weekend, very sunny when we arrived here, in fact, midweek. They've been having record temperatures through the late part of the summer here in Australia, over 40 degrees a couple of weeks ago, but no sign of that today, and that is to the great advantage of Ferrari in Bridgestone, whose tyres tend to like the colder weather, and to the disadvantage of Michelin and its partners, Williams, Renault, McLaren and Jaguar and BAR. They tend to perform much better in the hotter climates. We saw Giancarlo Fisichella making a very early pit stop. I think that was probably because he felt he was being held up by Nick Heidfeld, and he was going to have to stop anyway in the next 3 or 4 laps. May as well do it now and get clear of Heidfeld. You're riding on board then with Raikkonen, looking back at Felipe Massa, who's having no trouble staying with the McLaren at all. Look at this.
Massa's Ferrari engine, he's gone up the inside. Did he get through? Yes, he did get through, unless he disappeared somewhere. Massa has repassed Kimi Raikkonen. There you saw it. He got in the slip. He was quicker off the last corner, got in the slipstream, and was faster down the straight. And there's Raikkonen. He's got some problem. It looks like the rear locked up. It looks like the engine died because both his rear tyres suddenly locked, and that is why he got passed down the straight that easily, I think. Just the engine going a bit sick, and then it's blown up and locked up immediately. Nothing you can do about that unless you pull the clutch in immediately. But then as soon as the engine stops, the hydraulic pressure fades away and the clutch re-engages anyway. And that is an engine failure for Kimi Raikkonen.
Yes, you can see the smoke pouring out of the airbox. And I think the body language of Kimi Raikkonen says it all, as does the body language of Ron Dennis, we saw there up on the pit wall. This, I'm sorry to say, is no great surprise. McLaren having to run the car, the engine, a very low regime in order to make it last. And you can see that's how Massa cut through. He almost didn't make the pass stick. Raikkonen tried to get back round the outside, and then you could see that Raikkonen's rear wheels lock up, Martin, and that is clearly the engine they've had really real problems with that, haven't they? They've been treating it like a porcelain vase all weekend, just bathing it as Montoya dives into the pits.
Yes, they must have dropped it then because that one's broken. So Montoya then pitting, the leaders are on lap 11, and that for me is a great surprise. We thought Williams might be running more fuel than probably anybody else, given that we were expecting such an electric pace from them. And they weren't that hot in qualifying, and therefore we hoped they were going to go further. But Montoya then, the second man to pit. Yellow flags are out because of Raikkonen's stranded car there.
But I do wonder, he was in that queue behind Trulli, and I just do wonder, they must have realised that Trulli was perhaps carrying more fuel and he was on a hiding to nothing. I think they've rolled the dice here, Sam Michael and the team in the Williams strategy wall. They brought him in on lap 10, but there was a long stationary time, and into the pits comes Rubens Barrichello, I think that is, in the Ferrari. Michael Schumacher goes across the start-finish line. So, yes, obviously everyone carrying quite low fuel. But Montoya put in a lot of fuel on his first stop. Let's see what Ferrari do.
With this advantage, I wonder if Ferrari will refuel this a bit longer now and turn it into a two-stopper with a short first stint. New tyres going on, a lot of fuel going in there. About 7 seconds worth, James. So that's not going to go that far, is it? If they were converting the strategy, it would have been 9 or 10 seconds, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's about 45 kilos of fuel in there, which probably enough for about 15 to 16 laps. So that's an interesting choice there by the Ferrari team for Rubens Barrichello.
And Alonso pitted from third place at the same time. Coulthard still tucked up behind Sato than it was, as Button, who's also stopped, rejoins the racetrack. Jenson Button was pretty much on his own, but running strongly in fourth place. Is this the day he's going to get that first podium?
Well, he's been 5 times finishing in fourth place. Is this the day he's going to get it indeed? And Ferrari look like they're ready again for Michael Schumacher. Williams appear to be ready for Ralf Schumacher. Michael Schumacher leading the Grand Prix. Ralf Schumacher down in fourth place at the moment. Just to remind you how this works, they had to qualify yesterday with the fuel with which they would start the race. So obviously you don't want to go too far into the race because you don't want to carry too much fuel in qualifying. But you also want to be able to go a decent distance. Here comes Michael down the pit lane, and Ted will take us through.
Well, Michael Schumacher, 100 kilometres an hour. He's got to watch it because Williams are still in the pit lane for Ralf Schumacher. They've been there over a lap now. The tyres are changing, no problems with the stop. Here he goes, it's long. It is long. Oh, it is long. Out it goes. What's the time on there? 9.4. That's a switch to a two-stop. What do you reckon?
I reckon they were slow getting the refueler off, Ted, so it's difficult to know, but the fuel would have been going in nonetheless. And they had to have 3 or 4 tugs to get that off. Michael still got out in the lead of the Grand Prix. He had 2 or 3 second advantage anyway over Rubens, but there finally Ralf comes in. The team are not really allowed to send their mechanics out until the car's just about to come in, but clearly Ralf either missed his signal to come in or elected to take another lap. And out behind him also goes Jarno Trulli. So now we'll see how it unfolds after the first stop. Coulthard then hasn't stopped yet. He looks like he's just about the longest runner, nor is Mark Webber. Mark Webber up to third place too now in the Jaguar.
Well, Ralf Schumacher got out in front of the Sauber there of Felipe Massa, who certainly seems to be punching above his weight at the moment, but he hasn't made his first pit stop yet. But also Jarno Trulli lost out a little bit in that. He has now dropped behind the Williams of Ralf Schumacher. So that's a switch in the pit stops. Ralf Schumacher a winner there.
Yeah, and he's ahead of Montoya too. So Montoya really, if he did stop early to get through the traffic, it certainly didn't pay off for him. Montoya well tucked up there, look, coming through the back of this picture.
Yeah, we didn't exactly see what happened to Montoya during the course of that pit stop sequence there for Trulli, Ralf Schumacher et al. But certainly something's happened to Montoya because he's now 28.9 seconds behind race leader Michael Schumacher in 10th place. At the moment, Michael Schumacher leading from Rubens Barrichello. This is lap 14. And Webber is coming into the pits from third place, so Alonso moves up into third place. Coulthard there has not stopped yet, so perhaps McLaren running a little bit more fuel in their strategy, starting to pay off for them. You can see the field spacing out a little bit as Mark Webber makes the Jaguar first pit stop, and that clock was not right. It was about 8 seconds, I think, so Webber looks like he's on a two-stopper.
You were right about Coulthard being held up behind Sato. He's now going 1.5 seconds a lap faster, so although he didn't look that close, this is what the drivers have been saying. Even if you get within 1.5 seconds of the guy in front, you're already beginning to hurt. Such is the way the aerodynamics are on these cars now. They're so efficient that they seem to be so easily destabilised by the turbulent air from another car. Maybe they've got to do more work in wind tunnels with one car following the other to do something about this.
You can see Massa running wide.
I think it was Fisichella, wasn't it? But the problem for him there was the Toyota was just cruising into the corner and basically caught him out. Presumably that was D'Amata. Fisichella was about to catch him. The Toyota was just snail-like in the braking zone. Whether D'Amata's got a problem, we don't know.
Well, Toyota haven't really been on it at all this weekend, have they? Mike Gascoigne, the technical director of Renault, left over the winter as McLaren get ready for a pit stop for one of their, well, for David Coulthard, Kimi Raikkonen being out of the race, and in he comes.
Yes, Raikkonen out of the Grand Prix. That's the first engine failure we've seen this weekend under these new regulations, where the engines have to basically be like pit puzzles for the weekend. And away goes Coulthard with a bit of a stutter there, but back into the race. If he is on a two-stopper, he may just be in better shape towards the end of the Grand Prix.
Lap 19 of the Australian Grand Prix. Michael Schumacher and Rubens Barrichello put a lap on Christian Klien in the Jaguar, who has just made his first Formula One pit stop, and he has rejoined in 16th place. We have 18 cars still running. Zolt Baumgartner has retired in the Minardi, and Kimi Raikkonen we saw spectacularly locking up the rear wheels when the engine failed in the McLaren earlier on lap 9. So 18 cars in it. Schumacher leads Barrichello, less than a second now between them as Barrichello gets close to the back of the 6-time world champion. Fernando Alonso is 8 seconds behind Barrichello in 3rd place. Button then in 4th. Ralf Schumacher right behind Jenson Button. Good scrap developing there for 4th place. Trulli's 7th. Montoya, who had very poor start to this Grand Prix, went from 3rd on the grid down to 7th at the end of the first lap. And Mark Webber is still going strong in the Jaguar in the last of the points-paying positions in 8th place. And you can see now that there is the Williams of Juan Pablo Montoya trying, as he has for most of this Grand Prix really, to get past Jarno Trulli.
Yes, there's something curious. I think drivers are finding their cars are either hooked up completely or nowhere. We've got Alonso doing 1 minute 25.7, and then his teammate Trulli.
Oh, Martin, sorry. That was spectacular spin.
Yeah. And then we've got Trulli in the 1 minute 27, best part of a second and a half per lap slower. Jenson Button struggling for pace too, although he's hanging on to 4th place just as you can see there.
That was some kind of spin by Felipe Massa. Complete 360 job, managed to come out pointing in the right direction. What does that feel like?
As long as you don't point in the wrong direction or hit something very hard, it feels not too bad actually, but if it surprises you, you begin to be very cautious then. If you're not absolutely clear why it happened, and sometimes you can be a little surprised, you don't see oil on the track or whatever, then you begin to think, well, what's going wrong here? But Massa reminds me a bit of Sato. They're both incredibly fast, but just always looking slightly out of control. And we've seen both of them then have moments in this Grand Prix so far.
Well, Ralf Schumacher is all over the back of Jenson Button at the moment in the battle for 4th place, and we're noting also that both the Renaults in clear air and Trulli's strategy, I wonder, it might well be different from Alonso, as he's running 1.4 seconds a lap slower than his teammates, and that would indicate they're doing different things, and that's really bad news for Juan Pablo Montoya if that's the case. Lovely onboard shot here as the BMW engine revs to almost 19,000 RPM around this track. Huge amount of stress going through these engines. It really is remarkable that they can expect them to last a whole Grand Prix weekend. Something in the region of 500 miles at this kind of performance level. Ted has news for us.
Down at BAR, James, you're talking about Takuma Sato. They think he's lost or damaged rather, his front nose, his front wing, because he's lost front downforce. He's complaining about that on the radio. They can't just bring him in and change it now, but look out for him in his next stop. They may well change the nose then.
He's still on pace though. He's still quicker than Coulthard, who's in front of him, and quicker than Webber too. Webber 8th, Coulthard 9th, Sato 10th. So the BAR still got good pace, even if he has damaged it. Toyota has had a bit of a disastrous weekend. You've got D'Amata down in 13th. Hannes, who started near the back of the grid, still running in 17th. both of them with very little pace indeed.
Yeah, that new car for Toyota is described as being fairly ordinary. It's a step forward from last year, according to technical director Mike Gascoigne, but he's got a lot of development planned for that car throughout the season. And he described the engine as a World Championship winning engine, so clearly that's not part of the problem as the Toyota gets out of the way to be lapped by this scrap here. This the battle for 4th place. Jenson Button, once the teammate back in 2000 at Williams of Ralf Schumacher, certainly showed him a thing or two towards the end of that season, didn't he, Martin? And made people ask some questions about Ralf Schumacher and ask even more questions about Jenson Button and what he might achieve. Now, with the BAR team holding off Ralf Schumacher, and there you can see Jarno Trulli trying to hold off Juan Montoya, who's going to make a move on him, getting pretty frustrated, I would imagine, the Colombian now. He really wants to get past this Renault. Yeah,
it's not enough of a braking zone there. You've got to be alongside before you can make it stick there. But, it's Montoya really getting frustrated, you can see, and this race has not unfolded anything like he expected before he stepped on the plane to Australia, and even sitting on the grid in 3rd place. So Michael Schumacher leads by 1.8 seconds now, further 9 seconds behind them, just hanging on to Alonso. And then we've got Button, 32 seconds off the lead now, closely followed by Ralf Schumacher. And the fight between Trulli and Montoya is another 5 seconds adrift. Webber's not flying in 8th, nor is Coulthard in 9th. There's a lot of disappointing performances out there today in terms of actual pace, no doubt about it.
Well, we will see. Michael Schumacher on lap 24, 2.5 seconds clear of Rubens Barrichello. And we were talking about how the pace had dropped off slightly, the Ferraris. Clearly a big part of that had to do with having just taken on some fuel, because now Michael Schumacher, as the fuel is burning off, getting back into the 1:24 range, picking the pace up quite a bit. Rubens Barrichello keeping him honest. And I've been impressed, Martin, by Rubens Barrichello. I mean, here today, he's obviously playing the role behind, 2.5 seconds behind his teammate. But he's made his point, hasn't he? He's never been more than just a few hundredths of a second in any session slower than Michael this weekend. And he's right on Schumacher's pace nowadays, isn't he?
Yeah, but it's not enough, is it, really? It's got to be ahead of it somehow, because Michael always seems to just make those little extra moments in the traffic, off the start, in qualifying, gets it on pole, on the clean side of the grid. All those tiny little things make the difference. And look at this then, finally, we're cut away, just as I think Montoya was going to get the job done, and indeed he has. Trulli tries to fight back, but it's showboating because Montoya has the position.
Yeah, that was very, very unfortunate, just as Montoya made the move, directed cut to the pits. Nevertheless, he's made the pass stick, and Montoya finally, look at it, out of the final corner. It's almost as if he hits the go faster button and says, get out of my way, I am coming through. He is lengths ahead now of Trulli as he goes down into turn 1, finally free of that Renault. Now we'll see how fast Montoya is.
And Louise has Kimi Räikkönen down in the pits.
Kimi, I know you've had a chance to have a good look at the telemetry with the engineers. Has it given you any indication of exactly what the problem was?
I think so. We lost the water pressure, and then the engine gave up, but it was very disappointing.
The team have made it quite clear that there is more development to come from this car, but nonetheless, have you been a bit disappointed by your pace this weekend?
Yeah, for sure. We wasn't expecting to driving on 10th place and not going anywhere, and it's for sure disappointing, because we shouldn't be on that position. We should be fighting on the 1st place, and I think so no one is happy.
First start under the new regulations, how do you think it went?
It didn't change for us anything.
Thanks, Kimi.
So Montoya stuck behind Trulli for a full 10 laps, and that will certainly have made a major impact on his Grand Prix effort. He's now up into 6th place, 5 seconds behind teammate Ralf Schumacher, who seems to be struggling a bit for pace at the moment.
Yeah, but something's just happened to Alonso. Alonso's just done a very, very slow lap, and that's why Ralf Schumacher is suddenly up behind him. So 4th place now, there's just 9/10 of a second in. There it is in front of your eyes. So I don't know whether he had a mistake, and it was his out lap from his pit stop, but even so, it was very slow.
Here we can see that moment of Sato up onto the grass, down into his 10th place, as he's been for most of the Grand Prix. Takuma Sato having an eventful afternoon on his return to Grand Prix racing. He raced, of course, in 2002 with the Jordan team before sitting out last season as the BAR test driver. Got the one opportunity to race at Suzuka, the final Grand Prix of the season, where he scored some points. That gave him a lot of confidence going into this Grand Prix, but he's been a little bit ragged this afternoon. Teammate Button, though, is dropping Ralf Schumacher, and as a result of Alonso's second pit stop, has gone up into third place. So Schumacher, Barrichello, the top two, 40 seconds now clear, if you please, of this man Jenson Button, who dives into the pits, which will hand third place back to Fernando Alonso. Also diving into the pits is Juan Pablo Montoya from 6th place. So poor guy's going to be behind Trulli again, I think, when he comes out, which is not his idea of a happy day. A little bit of a problem getting the fuel hose off Button's car.
He's away cleanly, though. He's going out of the pits in front of us in the com box here, and there seems a problem, the left front problem there for Montoya. Lost another 2 or 3 seconds, and that will surely, any advantage he made over Trulli in those 2 laps as he pitted, he will surely have lost there. And you can't even take fuel on board at that moment, so it's just not working out for Juan Pablo Montoya at all today. Meanwhile, Michael Schumacher leads by 2.9 seconds now then from Barrichello.
Here comes Webber. He pitted on lap 13 originally, and here he is again now on lap 28. Taking on some more fuel, going back out into the field, and I think he'll rejoin around 9th place, so just out of the points. That will push David Coulthard up into 8th place in the final points-paying positions. So let me give you the order on lap 29. Michael Schumacher, Rubens Barrichello, Fernando Alonso, the front 3. Ralf Schumacher 4th, Trulli 5th. Buttons down to 6th now after his second stop. Montoya 7th, Coulthard 8th. That's the points-paying positions. Takuma Sato has just made a pit stop as well.
Webber cleanly out of the pits then, as is Sato, and underway once more. Ralf Schumacher pits then, as expected, so the second stop of the afternoon for Ralf Schumacher. Clearly they've gone to and remain on a 3-stopper. I don't know what McLaren are doing with Coulthard, but it seems as if probably Coulthard, Webber and Klein are the only solid 2-stoppers of the afternoon.
Approaching half distance then in this Australian Grand Prix. Ralf Schumacher, everything neat and tight. A little bit of a jump there off the clutch, but he rejoins the fray. Had a bit of a ragged afternoon here last year and picked up only a couple of points, or 1 point in fact, but today running in 4th place before he made that pit stop. Interesting to see where he comes out relative to Jenson Button, because those two are having a really good scrap before the second round of pit stops. Into the pits comes Barrichello.
I wonder how fast these Ferraris could go if somebody was chasing them. Michael's just set another new lap record on a 1:24.1, just responding to Rubens. Pushed him again, got the gap down to around 2, so Michael just said, okay, I'll just go a little bit faster and spoil that run. That's a lovely stop for Ferrari. That even's working better than anybody else for them today. And away he goes then. As soon as he crosses that white line on the way out of the pits, he's away. He must not cross the right line that runs down the middle of the racetrack, as you know, until he's past the end of it and joined the racing line. And a lovely clear track in front of him and behind him. When it's working well, everything falls into place.
It really does, doesn't it? Well, you were talking there about Michael Schumacher responding because Rubens Barrichello was pressuring him, but Rubens is now re-signed for another couple of years at Ferrari. Michael's already won 6 World Championships. What do you think the balance of play is within that team? Are they allowed to race each other now, do you think?
Yes, I think that they are. I'd like to think that he's got every chance of racing, but you just know that if there's 5 good engines, the very best one, Michael will get it. He will always get the best that's in the team, even if it's only 2 horsepower more, it'll go his way, and all the best pieces inevitably head in Michael's direction, I would have thought. He is the team leader, he is the world champion, and he's earned that right in many respects.
And Rubens has signed up for another few years of it. Well, we'll see. Down the pit lane comes Michael Schumacher on lap 30.
I wouldn't be a front jackman for all the tea in China. Coming in 100 kilometers, that's 62 miles an hour. Don't stand on the road and wave somebody down who's doing 62 miles an hour. And anyway, that's what they do for a living, and they're good men.
And there you can see the margin as Schumacher emerges in front of Rubens Barrichello, about half the length of the pit straight here at Albert Park between the two. And it was 2.3 seconds before that round of pit stops for Ferrari. We'll see what it is when we rejoin. But that lap of Michael Schumacher's, that 1:24.1, almost indecently fast around this racetrack. He is back out in front. Alonso still third, but now half a minute behind the 2 Ferraris. Ralf Schumacher is 4th, Jenson Button 5th, Juan Montoya 6th, Jarno Trulli 7th, and David Coulthard holding on to, clinging to a point in 8th place. Poor old Mark Webber then goes into the Jaguar garage to retire from this Grand Prix. He was in a points-paying position before his second pit stop, and we've seen there a Jaguar come out of the pits and within a couple of laps retire from the Grand Prix, and that's something we've seen quite a few times in the past. So I wonder whether that has anything to do with the pit stop itself, whether that caused some sort of problem. Well, let's talk a little bit about Jenson Button, shall we? 5th he is at the moment. Montoya is 6th in some clear air, and at the moment scything into Button's advantage, 0.8 of a second faster than the Englishman on that last lap.
Fisichella having a ding-dong battle with Nick Heidfeld, and they really are going for it. They're going to interlock wheels if they're not careful, and Heidfeld had to get out of it. Fisichella very feisty there, but I tell you, he did not expect to be racing with Heidfeld this afternoon.
Well, this is a great scrap, isn't it? The BAR Honda of Jenson Button just holding off Juan Pablo Montoya, and there's a bit of history here with these two. You recall that Button made his debut in Formula 1 with Williams back in 2000. He was moved aside to make way for Montoya, who's now going into his 4th season of Formula 1 with Williams, but he will be leaving the team at the end of the year, and a lot of people believe that Jenson Button is high on Sir Frank Williams' shopping list for next year, along with Mark Webber to replace Montoya, and possibly also Ralf Schumacher if he should make a move too. So quite a lot at stake here, and Sir Frank Williams, I think, will be a very, very interested observer here. He knows what he's got in Juan Montoya. He ran Button when he was a raw youth of 20. Now team leader at BAR. Can he fight off Juan Pablo Montoya? Dickie Stanford there, team manager of Williams, very experienced man, and all the Williams mechanics enjoying this scrap as much as we are.
Michael Schumacher still matching the pole position time on the last lap, a 1:24.4. Barrichello, a 1:26.8. The gap now up to 12.6 seconds. I'll keep an eye on Barrichello's time because he's beginning to slip quite badly now, and even Alonso beginning to edge back towards him. Montoya ever closer to Jenson Button. Jenson under pressure. This is that turn 13 where Montoya is so fast under braking. Jenson forced onto the grass. He will not damage the car. He might collect a bit of rubbish, but he probably was a bit surprised there. He ought to have just closed Montoya down a bit earlier, but Montoya's car superior, under pressure, significantly superior, and well, Jenson still going very well, but now down to 6th place.
Williams mechanics ready in the pit lane then. Both of their drivers, Ralf Schumacher and Juan Pablo Montoya, have done 2 stops in this Grand Prix. Clearly they're going to stop, at least one of them is going to stop 3 times. Their Ferrari guys getting ready for Michael Schumacher as well. So Schumacher leading Barrichello, Alonso 3rd, Ralf Schumacher 4th, Montoya 5th, Button 6th. He dropped down from 3rd place at one point. Into the pits comes Michael Schumacher. It's Montoya that the Williams team will wait for. He's right behind. There he is. Ted.
Montoya pits, but it's 1 lap too late. Those tyres will not be up to hot top temperature. And now there's a problem on the rear right. I don't believe it. Another one. That's more or less every pit stop Montoya's had today. There's been a problem with it. Meantime, Michael Schumacher in. No problems as usual. He's away.
And of course the Ferrari is the best part of a lap ahead of Montoya. He follows him out of the pit, and if he catches him, he'll lap him. So another dismal stop then for Montoya. I don't know if it's the wheel nut sticking or the wheel on the spindle, but whatever it is, they're not able to cleanly change the wheels on that Williams at Montoya.
Montoya was, though, able to rejoin ahead of Jenson Button quite comfortably, so that's one piece of good news for him. That is the top 8, and we have 13 laps to go here in the Australian Grand Prix. Into the pit lane comes Ralf Schumacher, chasing Giancarlo Fisichella. Fisichella was 11th, Ralf Schumacher was 4th, and should stay 4th, because Juan Montoya, who he was racing against, he had a bit of a margin over him anyway, and Montoya had that slow stop. So if Williams can service Ralf Schumacher a little better than they managed to do with Montoya, and that has been proved to be the case, he will rejoin ahead of his teammate.
Jordan Berry very, very slow out of the pits. So Heidfeld then out of the race, becomes the 5th retirement. Massa too then, falling like flies now on lap 47 of the Grand Prix.
Nice.
That's a Ferrari letting through the BAR. So Michael Schumacher then has just done a 1:29. Is he creeping into some problems, or is he just coasting towards the end of the Grand Prix? Is this early signs of, let's have a look at his sector times. He's 4 seconds slow on this current lap. He's not coming in the pit lane. We haven't really heard his engine note at the moment, but Michael Schumacher would not be going that slow intentionally, unless they're shaping up a nice formation finish or something for tomorrow's newspapers. Let's wait and see, but he's absolutely coasting.
Just going past us under our commentary position, Jenson Button, who he'd allowed through, was going through, and the revs were noticeably much higher on that Honda engine than the Ferrari engine following through. Here we are, let's have a listen.
Can't hear anything wrong as such, it's just going very slowly. There's the gap down to 18 seconds. He was 1.4 slower in the first sector alone. Ted, have you got any news?
Well, there's certainly no worried faces at Ferrari. Everything's calm. The mechanics are all sitting down. They're not preparing. Normally, if something is going to happen, they'll at least put one guy into the pit box in case he has to come in. But something Ross Brawn was saying to me when I spoke to him this morning, Martin, he was saying that at the end of the race, we will turn everything down. If we're in a good position, we'll turn everything down. Let's just hope for Ferrari fans that's the case.
I guess the one thing about this is the headlines coming away from this Grand Prix is that Ferrari wins and wins big, but perhaps not with as big a margin as it might have been if Schumacher hadn't babied the car in the last 3 laps. Very uncharacteristic of him. Always a danger you might lose your concentration, I would imagine, when you're back off to that extent after a hard hour and a half's work at the cockpit. Here's David Coulthard, though, battling on in 8th place.
It's a long Grand Prix when your car's not working right or whatever. Whether he's nursing something, we don't know, but he's back in the 128s as well, but hanging on to 8th place, the final World Championship point.
Alonso 39 seconds then behind Michael Schumacher in the closing stage of this Grand Prix, but it could have been closer to a minute if Schumacher had pressed on at the pace that he was going for the first 50 or so laps of the Grand Prix. Montoya was unable in the end to close up on Ralf Schumacher unless Schumacher has some sort of problem on the final lap. Montoya unable to close the gap on him. They're the Renault mechanics. They've got a lot to celebrate today because Fernando Alonso has been really one of the stars of the day, no doubt about that, in 3rd place.
Yeah, if we're going to turn a Grand Prix into an endurance event with one engine for the weekend, and we're going to see people limping to the line like the end of the Le Mans 24 hours, it's no good. Formula One is a sprint from the start to the finish. I don't like to see people having to pussyfoot around and just mollycoddle their engines. It's not what it's about.
Well, I'm sure that many would agree with that as Michael Schumacher comes down the pit straight. There's the checkered flag, and Michael Schumacher takes win number 71 in what has been an extraordinary career already. This his 13th season in Formula One, and it's his 4th win here in Australia. What a record he has. 4 wins in 5 years. Rubens Barrichello, solid drive by him today. He backed right off in the final part of the Grand Prix, having pressed Michael Schumacher pretty hard in the early stages, and we're waiting now to see Fernando Alonso. We have half a minute to wait for Fernando Alonso. I think that's probably him now. Here he is, yes, coming down the pit straight. All the Renault mechanics at the top of the fence cheering. A great start to the season for Renault then, a podium finish for Fernando Alonso to go with the 3 that he had last season in his first year with the Renault team. So cracking start for Alonso, but really it's all Ferrari day. Still waiting for Ralf Schumacher and Juan Montoya to come over. Williams having plenty to think about here this afternoon, I think. But these guys, huge amount of Italians living here in Melbourne. Italians and Greeks, the largest expatriate community here in Melbourne. And they'll certainly be going nuts tonight in the Italian quarter.
Forza Ferrari in Melbourne. Michael Schumacher, the winner. 2000, 2001, 2002, and now 2004. We will be right back with Mark Blundell's analysis, and we'll talk to the drivers about the first chapter of F1 2004. And you're back with us in Melbourne, where Michael Schumacher has won the Australian Grand Prix for the 4th time. Really a doddle through Albert Park for the Ferrari #1. 10 out of 10 then for Michael Schumacher. Barrichello making it a 1-2 for Ferrari. Alonso up there on the podium for Renault. An excellent drive from him. Then the two Williams drivers, 5 and 4 for Ralf Schumacher and Juan Montoya. Button, 3 points for BAR in 6th place. Trulli with 2, and David Coulthard making his point for McLaren. Ferrari, a maximum 18 points. Williams on 9, Renault 8, BAR 3, and McLaren just the 1. But really, it is a champion start.
So, tell me about it. Easy?
No, not at all. I mean, you saw the close competition I had together with Rubens for the first half of the race before he then got into some trouble with the brakes. It was a big push. Then Fernando was obviously falling a little bit behind, but I think it's the ideal place for us to do what we are doing. I will be greatly interested what can happen to us in Malaysia. I know Bridgestone has done a fantastic job with the tyres, so I hope we can carry on some of that into Malaysia, but I see a much tighter competition there.
It was a good start. I had a fantastic first half of the race. I was pushing Michael, waiting for a mistake, waiting for something that I was on it. Maybe I could have a go on him, but unfortunately at some point I ran too close to him. My brake pedal started to give up. When I came to the pit stop, I had the car a little bit heavier, and the brake pedal never came back anymore. So I was talking to the team to see if they could do something or tell me something to make it better, but there was no way, and the brake pedal was far too long.
At the start, it would have been quite easy on the grass like that to lose it. Were you having a bit of a difficult moment?
No, but you know, I started so quick, much better than Montoya, than Juan, and he tried to close me a little bit, the window, and I was in the grass a little bit. It was a fun moment.
Yeah, it's great to be in the points and to finish 6th in the first Grand Prix. I've never scored it before, so it's not too bad.
Mark, no fairy tale ending this time?
No, it's a shame because we were going pretty well. You know, the pace wasn't too bad, and in the races, if you have any issues, that's it. There's no rewind button. It's the facts of it. So we had a gearbox problem.
Were you surprised by the pace of the Ferraris, and do you think that that is a true indication they're going to be that far ahead of everybody at all the other races?
Well, I think in Malaysia, if it's dry in Malaysia and they're like that, then you'll be like that for quite a while while we make up ground. But I'll be surprised if Malaysia is like that.
Not an ideal start, but we got 2 cars in the points, and I think we're sort of a poor second in the constructors at the moment.
Juan had a couple of little slips in the pit stops, I think.
Yes, we had some trouble with the right rear wheel, I think, in the pit stops.
Ralph, how happy were you with your day's work?
Well, I mean, after a little problem I created yesterday, that's certainly relatively okay. From 8th to 4th, scored a few points, overtook them in the pits, so that was, you know, very good strategy from the team and good pit stops from the guys. Another thing is that we are missing a second to the Ferraris, which I didn't expect. That's partly due to aerodynamically, it's partly aerodynamically, then some graining on the tires, which we have to come on top of. Obviously Ferrari doesn't have that, and you know, even the car weight has to be reduced a bit. I mean, the whole package has to improve slightly, and I think then we're going to get it together. It will take us a couple more races, but I'm pretty confident we're going to make it.
Well, really, from the moment we arrived here in Melbourne, and certainly from the moment Michael Schumacher touched down, you got the impression it was going to be a Ferrari weekend. That's the way it turned out, Mark.
That's an incredible situation, isn't it? They've come off the last year and already they're picking up again, and off they go. A lot of work down the pit lane to be done. People like McLaren really looking bad. Williams nearly there, but not quite. Renault looks strong, but they've still got many miles to run before they can get close to those Ferraris.
They looked in a different league to the rest from the start. They were away and gone, despite a very good effort from Alonso in the Renault.
Well, Alonso had an amazing start. I mean, what was even more amazing for me was the fact that he spent a considerable amount of time on the grass. A little bit of a screw-up, though, in terms of getting his teammate into a little bit of trouble, caused some damage. Montoya runs wide, blows his chances there of keeping up with the 2 Ferraris. You see him there, they just accelerate off the grid. Montoya doesn't get a clean start, gets too much wheel spin. Alonso does a remarkable start there. He tries to catch up in the first corner, blows it under braking, runs wide, the rest of the pack run by him. But all in all, clean. I think everybody contended well with the starts with no launch control.
Absolutely.
And at this point, though, Ferrari are just still superior. They lead in that first corner, and we never see anything different for the rest of the race.
McLaren have had their problems this winter, and I think they were very much in evidence here in Melbourne. Kimi Raikkonen, who a lot of people expect to challenge Schumacher today, one of the drivers that blew up, and that hurt McLaren and hurt him badly.
Yeah, Kimi, a great expectation for him as a driver for the World Championship title, but you know, he's only going to do that if he's got a great car underneath him. Certainly at this point, McLaren do not seem to have a great car. A lot of long faces in that pit there. Engine failure at this point of the season, not really what we want to see. You see the car smoking away there, nicely on fire. Kimi's going to be frustrated. He's going to come into Malaysia hoping that things are going to be better, but they have lots and lots of work to get done.
Of course, he won in Malaysia last year. Williams way behind. At least they picked up points, and at least Montoya showed in that revolutionary car he can still overtake a few.
Well, Montoya's an ace at overtaking. You see him there cleanly going by Alonso. Nice move. And I think the big factor, though, was for these guys is they didn't really have the conditions to get their tyres working on the Williams. The Michelin needs the warmer conditions, but it didn't really stop Montoya from making some great overtaking manoeuvres, and probably out of anyone on the racetrack, he did the most.
He's truly in it by there. Now he does a move on Button, doesn't he?
Nice move on Button here. I mean, Button was trying to fend him off. You can see that he squeezes down the inside. Button tries his utmost to keep him there, but just pushes him wide, and he ends up on the grass. Jensen probably a little bit frustrated by letting him get by, but at the end of the day, I think he had the better car.
Yeah, sure. The fight back starts in Malaysia in a couple of weeks' time. How worried are you by what Ferrari have done here?
I honestly think that Ferrari will go on and win the title. I just cannot see anybody down this pit lane at present who have got anywhere near the complete package. Michael Schumacher just looks invincible. Looks like he's just a young guy come back into the sport. It's a worry for everybody. I think that everyone will get back on the plane and go back to Europe. Designers are going to be working every hour what God sends. These guys just look unreal.
35 years young, and Michael Schumacher, who put the Ferrari on pole with Barrichello alongside him. Before you go, you've got a point to make about the qualifying system, and I think basically we all hate it.
The big point is let's change it, and let's change it before we get to the next race, because this is not what we need for Formula One.
And Michael Schumacher, the man who was dominated here in Australia. Mark, thank you very much indeed. Of course, we go straight from here to Malaysia, to Sepang, and full coverage of the Malaysian Grand Prix throughout the weekend. And the race live 6:45 on Sunday morning. Michael Schumacher then and Ferrari are the fast starters in Australia, but there is a long road ahead. Good night.